I'm here today with my friend Brenda Leyland, and she is an InScribe member, and she has contributed to a new anthology that's coming out called Creativity and Chaos: Endeavors for Trying Times. It's going to be a wonderful anthology, and it's so good to see you, Brenda.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, yes. It's I've really been enjoying my little chats with some of the various contributors. And I have to say it's been lovely because there's such a wonderful variety in this book. There's devotionals, there's poetry, there's memoir. And I see that you have a piece. It's under the title Reflections, but it's called A Kaleidoscope of Creativity. So that sounds interesting to me. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about that piece?
All right. So the first inspiration of it is the title of the anthology. Creativity and chaos. For some reason, I've always liked the idea. I always feel inspired when there's something chaotic to fix it. So this sort of inspired me to say, well, let's see what we can do in the chaos of it. And for me, the piece was inspired because of the global pandemic. So I thought, what could I write about that I could share in this anthology? So first of all, I was inspired by the name Creativity and Chaos. And then, of course, I was inspired when I started to watch on social media, when it started to light up in the beginning weeks of the pandemic. There was the chaos of the news media and all the scary things and all that kind of stuff. But I started watching all kinds of creative people all of a sudden stepping up and doing all kinds of interesting things. And they would share stuff online and say, well, I'm right. One fellow decided he was going to read all of Shakespeare's sonnets. So that's what he did for 300 and how many there are. Every morning he'd have a new one. So anyway, so that inspired me because I'm thinking, well, what could I do to be part of that? Because I watch things on social media. I'm on Facebook, and I was on Twitter or whatever it's called, X called now, and then now
Right.
Instagram.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, in my small world, what could I do? So I'm a blogger. I blog. I've been blogging since 2008. That's my favorite place to write. And I thought, well, what could I do here? I was blogging maybe once a week or once every couple of weeks. And so I thought, well, let me blog every day for a little while and see if I could just be part of that group that says, well, you're not alone. You're stuck in your house and all by yourself, but you're not alone. We're all in this together. So that's what I started doing. I started blogging, and then and that was the thing that I found inspiring for me in this place, but just to also be sane while you're in the middle of all this, because there's all kinds of people doing all kinds of neat things that says I can inspire people to keep going on and carry on with life in the small place that we were now.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's a personal essay in the reflections set category, and so I'm just sharing sort of my little experiences that I did while I was stuck at
During
home.
that time, yeah. Well, a couple things jump out at me from what you just said, and yes, I mean, I think we all saw those kinds of things. I hadn't heard about the fellow reading, the sonnets, but everybody was baking and they were building and people were sewing and it's true, like all kinds of creative things and doing new things. For myself, I actually started learning German because I had something I had always wanted to do. So, we were all doing different things because, like you say, we were stuck at home, and why not use that time productively? Otherwise, I think, you would kind of go a little stir crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah,
another thing that jumped out at me, you were talking about your blog, and I've been following your blog for years, and it's a lovely blog. I love, sometimes you share homes, but you often share beautiful photography because you are a photographer and you do like often flowers and just really beautiful things.
thank you.
Yeah. What's the name of your blog again? It's
It's called It's a Beautiful Life.
It's a
Uh,
Beautiful Life. Yeah.
Beautiful Life. Beauty has always been an inspiration, and it took me many years to actually recognize that beauty was the thing that inspired me at the very core. And when I recognized that, I said to the Lord, I asked God, well, what could I do about that? Like I just see this is the thing that inspires me. So I'm believing you gave that to me. And so I'm inspired by the world around me, the beauty that you see in the gardens and in nature and in the skies and in the oceans. And then I'm also inspired by all those artists and artisans and craftsmen and people who just do amazing things to keep our world going
Yeah.
and add beauty to it. That's so then I try to blog in that vein of how to keep looking for the little things that and the big things that make life worth living because it's beautiful.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so that's what.
You do a lovely job. Like I say, your writing is very poignant, and I often find it just exactly sort of the little encouraging nugget that I needed for that day. Where can people follow you or find your blog?
So it's at beautiful.wordfromhome.com is the link. So beautiful.wordfromhome.com.
Yeah. And I just
And if I,
encourage anybody, like you should follow Brenda's blog because it's lovely and it's very, you're nonpartisan. And I mean, you don't get too carried away with, politics or any of that stuff. You really do just focus on the beauty of life. And like you say, artists or nature, it's lovely. Yeah.
thank you. And that's what I do try to focus on because we need a space that's just a little bit of a regrouping where you can go and just be quiet for a minute and then go back into the fray of life. But at least there's this one little place that's a little recluse.
Yeah, it's like a little refreshment instead of
Yeah.
always, being on edge. So how did that work out for you? Like during that time, you said you tried to do it every day. Have you kept that up, or did that sort of
No,
figure
no. I went back to my what I do once a week. I used to when I started blogging, I was very happy to do it every day. But after a while, you get to the place. Well, I have another life. I have to live outside of that, so you can't be doing that all the time. And so now I'm happy with my sweet spot of once a week. Everybody knows that I try to post on Fridays. That's what I try to do as much as possible. And so people come by and see if I've got something new, and for the most part, I do. And so yeah. So, but in that moment, one of the things that I did was I went to my bookshelves. When you go visiting, the first thing I look for is people's bookshelves in their houses. Where's the books? And we used to visit when I was a kid. That was if I saw books on a shelf somewhere, that was where I was gravitating because you never know what kind of interesting books might be on that shelf. So I decided to look at my own bookshelves. You can't come to my house, but I could share some of those books on my blog. So I did that for a short season, in the very beginning when everything was just locking down. And something very interesting happened to me, but I think I won't tell that so that you can go read the story.
Okay, yeah, no spoilers.
Yeah, I don't want any spoilers, but there was something that kind of came out of my blogging, a certain book where the author got in touch with me from the Netherlands. And anyways, it was a lovely little story. And I thought, well, that just made everything worth it, and it was a book I bought 20 years ago. And he had of course, written it 20 years ago. And the reason he got in touch with me was he says, I'm just looking to see if there's any of my old books still out there floating around. And he says, and your blog came up. So we had a nice little chat on our email. And eventually one day in the mail comes his autograph. He said, he asked if I would enjoy his autograph, of course. So I gave him my address, and all of a sudden there was this little note and some photographs, and yeah, it was kind of cool. And so that was one of those fun little highlights that came out of my doing something during the COVID.
I like that story because it really shows sort of that reciprocal encouragement, if you will, because I'm sure that was really kind of exciting and encouraging for you to think, oh, somebody's actually reading my blog or caring about what I say. And then for him too, to find that someone was, caring about what he had written.
And 20 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. I think one of the things I've noticed that's come out of some of the interviews I've been doing, is this two things are happening. Like people are using their creativity, whether it be blogging or whatever other creative thing they're doing, sewing or painting or whatever. And it's a way of processing, and it's almost like therapy, and it's their own way of making sense of their life. So there is personal value, and then how then sometimes what they're doing also is affecting somebody else and encouraging somebody else, so it's like there's these two parallel things happening that are for both the person creating and those who are responding to what has been created.
Yes, well, that's what really drew me to blogging in the end, was because you can have an immediate audience. You post that thing, and if you've got a small or large following, there's already somebody looking at it before you hardly pressed publish. That's what I find. There's already people already coming towards it from the ether somewhere. And so what I enjoy about that is to receive the comments, is there's that feeling of that reciprocity. Is that the right way you say that? Where I've sent something out and now somebody's responding to it. And I find, I think I would miss that in a book, because you're not getting that instant feedback, which I find my love language is words of affirmation. So I take that very much to heart. So yeah, maybe that's why blogging is my sweet spot, because I do enjoy getting, and of course there is always the downside of that, whereas if you're only looking for what the comments you get back, well, you could be quite disappointed if nobody responds, because some days life is busy and other people are doing other things, and your stuff is just sitting there. And I've had to learn to say that's okay, because I wrote it. I'm happy with it. I put my best effort in. At this moment, it was the best I could do today, and be happy with that too. And whether you get a response or not, but for
Yeah.
blogging on the mobile, there's that back and forth that I love.
I have to admit that, like, I read a lot of stuff, like blogs and different things that come across my desk. And because I do read a lot, I don't always respond, So
Well, I mean, who's got time, right? You
yeah,
don't have time. Yeah. I mean, you got another life to live.
yeah. And it's true, like with a book. So, you think about, say, reviews. And so a book review is similar, and yet it's not, because it's not that same sense of immediacy that, like you say, when people are commenting on a blog post or even on a social media post or whatever, there is that sense of, they're immediately, and you have that more of a personal connection happening.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do like that personal feeling. Yeah. And I guess that's what social media has kind of given us, to have that instant, where it makes me wonder how the Margaret Atwoods of the world and the Tracy Krauses have lived with that response coming later on.
Yeah.
You get the responses from people saying, yes, this book was helpful to me, or,
Yeah.
I'm glad for it. But
So in terms of your overall writing journey, so I know that, blogging has been kind of your primary thing, but I know you've had other pieces published in other anthologies and maybe in other publications and stuff like that. How does that compare to, in your overall writing life, so to speak?
well, it took me a little bit to sort that out, because of course I guess as I started thinking about wanting to be a writer, and that came to me in my 30s. When I was in my 30s, I started thinking about that. I followed L.M. Montgomery's life journey and her journals and her poetry and stuff. Not just, I mean, the Anne books and all those books were a great joy as a child, but I started following her as an adult, and really enjoyed her. So she was my inspiration about writing. And so in my 30s, I started thinking about, I'd like to write like Lucy Maud Montgomery, because she writes about beautiful things, and she writes about beauty in the world around her, and then she would write it beautifully. I thought I would like to try to do that. So that's what I did. And then of course in that you always think, well, there might be a book somewhere in there, and there still might be, but I started a memoir a few years ago that is just sort of there. I even joined up with one of the writing buddies, and we were going to, I was going to finish that, but it's still just there. And I said to her one day, I said, you know what, I'm coming up and getting closer to my 70s, scary. Coming up into my 70s one of these days, and it doesn't feel as important anymore as when I first started when I was in my 60s. Like in my just turning 60, that felt like the right time. And I think if I would have finished it, then I should have, but I didn't. There was other stuff going on in my life, and
Yeah.
so now I don't know if I answered your question, but writing a book is not as important as I thought it might be. And if I do it one day, that's fine. And if I don't, I'm doing things for my family. Like I'm writing stories down for my mom and her stories. She wrote some of them herself. She was a little blogger herself, not to an audience, just to her family.
Nice.
And we've always done that. And so I was trying to do that to help her with that. So those kinds of more family kind of oriented things.
Huh. And I was thinking, as you were speaking there, you know, just to throw out a little idea, and you can take it or leave it. But I'm sure, you know, you could probably gather together. You probably have hundreds and hundreds of blog posts, right? And
well, they're in the thousands now.
Thousands. Well, there you go. And you know, I'm thinking, man, you probably have several books there where you could gather those together into collections, maybe thematically or whatever, just sort of the best of Brenda. There's a name.
Yes, I like that. I have thought of that too, and it's sort of on the list of possibilities. And I keep thinking I should download all my blog posts because I'd hate for them to disappear and never show up again. But
Yeah,
because there's quite a few, and so there's my blog, and then of course I've got quite a few on the InScribe blog too now that are meaningful to me too. So it's like maybe you're right. Maybe that's the time to do that. Pull those together and create.
you never know, but like you say, then you know, a person gets busy and there's, you know, time constraints and things, but as the Lord leads, right?
Amen. Yes, amen.
As the Lord leads.
It
Well,
needs a quickening on the inside.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. Yes, exactly. Because if it's a chore and it's a burden, then it's probably not the right thing to do.
Probably not.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was going to read one little thing
I would love that.
from one quote from my piece.
Perfect.
My piece, the anthology, and then just a little ending. Out of these tumultuous times came beautiful things. My home became a true sanctuary. My mind, a creative blank, having gone into hiding at the outside, was now set free when I poured myself into something other than fretfulness and anxiety. And that was out of the little creative things that I did. So if I would say this would be my ending, people did extraordinary things during this time of the global pandemic. Some started new books, others created art and heirloom quilts and whatever. I had no interest in taking on anything large. During chaotic times, my soul tends to go inward and go quiet. And for me, during this time, I did ordinary things in my ordinary life, but it all became part of the kaleidoscope of creativity that emerged from chaotic times. And that makes me feel happy and blessed.
Oh, that's beautiful. That is beautiful. And and you're right. That's a great place to end.
All right.
So I am so thankful and grateful to have talked to you today. And it's been lovely to see you again. And hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Thank you so much, Tracy, for inviting me today. It was good. I really enjoyed speaking with you.
Oh, good. Well, God bless you. And we will talk again soon. Thank you, Brent.
All right, then. Thank you. Bye-bye.